feel the cold first, not as a sensation, but as a presence, a living thing that wraps itself around your ribs and squeezes slowly, patiently. The air here doesn't move like air should. It crystallizes. Each breath you take forms tiny daggers of ice in your nostrils, and when you exhale, the moisture freezes before it can drift away, creating small clouds that hang suspended like the ghosts of words you'll never speak. This is the Sakha Republic, Eastern Siberia, January 1953. And the thermometer outside the small wooden house reads minus 42 degrees Celsius. But you've stopped checking because the numbers stopped mattering weeks ago, when winter settled in like a permanent tenant, when the sun became a pale disk that barely climbs above the horizon, offering light without warmth, presence without comfort. Your name is Alexei, 45 years old, though your hands look ancient, cracked and weathered like the bark of the larch trees you've spent your life cutting. You are a woodcutter, a laborer, a man whose existence is measured in cords of timber and the slow accumulation of rubles that never quite stretch far enough. Your back aches in the mornings, a dull, persistent reminder that you've given your body to this land, to these forests, to this impossible cold. The house you live in is small, 3 rooms that smell of wood smoke and boiled cabbage. The walls are thick, layers of timber and moss and newspaper insulation, but still the cold finds its way through, seeping between the logs like water through cracks. You wake each morning in darkness, because in January this far north, darkness is the natural state of things and light is merely a brief interruption. Your wife, Katya, stirs the fire before dawn, her movements practiced and efficient, economical. She doesn't waste motion in the cold. Nobody does. Every gesture costs calories, burns precious heat, and heat is the currency of survival here, more valuable than money, more essential than hope. She boils water for tea, and the steam rises in the lamplight like spirits ascending, and for a moment, just a moment, the kitchen feels almost warm. You have 2 children, Dmitri, 12, and Anya, 8. They sleep together under piles of wool blankets and the fur of a bear you shot 3 winters ago. Their breath creates small caves of warmth beneath the covers, and you let them sleep as long as possible, because sleep is escape, and childhood here is brief enough already. Outside, the taiga stretches endlessly, a white ocean of birch and pine and larch. The trees stand like silent witnesses, their branches heavy with snow, and when the wind rises, which it always does, they creak and groan like old men, like the weight of winter is more than even they can bear. The snow here isn't soft, it's granular, crystalline, and when you walk on it, it doesn't compress, it shatters, making sounds like breaking glass beneath your felt boots. This is your life, ordinary, unremarkable, one life among millions in the vastness of the Soviet Union. You don't know that in 7 days something will happen in the sky above this frozen wilderness, something that will connect you to a moment of impossible mercy, and to families you will never meet across an ocean you will never see. But for now, you drink your tea, and you prepare for another day in the forest, and the cold waits outside, patient and eternal.
You pull on your Valenki,
The thick felt boots that are the only thing standing between your feet and frostbite. They're worn now, the felt compressed from years of use, but you've patched them carefully, stuffed newspaper inside for extra insulation, because new boots cost more than a month's wages, and there are always other needs, always other mouths. The boots smell of sweat and wool and the particular mustiness that comes from never fully drying, from existing in a perpetual state of damp cold. Katya hands you bread, dark rye, dense and sour, wrapped in cloth, and a tin of weak tea that will be cold before noon, but you'll drink it anyway, because even cold tea is something, a ritual, a brief pause in the relentless rhythm of the axe. She doesn't speak much in the mornings, conserving energy, conserving warmth. Her eyes are gray like the winter sky, and in them you see the same tired resilience that you feel in your own bones, the quiet determination that keeps people alive in places that were never meant for human habitation. The walk to the forest takes 40 minutes. You move through darkness, your breath creating a trail of frozen mist behind you. The path is packed snow, hardened by the feet of other men, other woodcutters who make this same journey, day after day, year after year, until their backs give out, or the cold takes them, or they simply fade into the whiteness like smoke. Above you, stars, so many stars that the sky looks wounded, pierced by thousands of tiny holes through which some distant light bleeds through. The Milky Way is a river of silver cutting across the darkness, and sometimes you stop, just for a moment, to look up, to remember that there's something beyond this, beyond the trees and the cold and the endless labor. Though what that something might be, you cannot say. Your work brigade consists of 6 men, all of them silent, all of them moving with the same mechanical efficiency. The foreman, Grigori, a man with a face like carved granite, marks your arrival in a ledger with fingers that are missing the tips. Frostbite from the winter of 47, the winter that killed so many. The winter that people still speak of in whispers, as if naming it might summon it back. You choose a tree, a larch, straight and tall, its trunk thick as a man's torso. The first strike of the axe sends vibrations up your arms, into your shoulders, a familiar pain that you've learned to ignore. The second strike, the third, a rhythm develops, steady, hypnotic. The tree groans with each impact, a low sound that travels up from the roots, and you wonder, as you always do, if trees feel pain, if they understand what's happening, if they mourn their own falling. The cold makes the work harder, the wood becomes brittle, unforgiving, and the axe blade needs sharpening more often. Metal contracts in extreme cold, loses its temper, and sometimes blades snap, dangerous shards spinning through the air. You've seen men lose eyes, lose fingers, lose their lives to carelessness born of exhaustion. By midday, what passes for midday in this perpetual twilight, you've felled 3 trees. Your shoulders burn, your hands are numb despite the thick gloves. You sit on a stump to eat your bread, and the other men do the same, scattered through the forest like stones, each man alone with his thoughts, his hunger, his private calculations of how many more years his body can endure this. You think of Dmitri, your son, who shows promise in mathematics. The schoolteacher, a woman from Yakutsk with soft hands and softer voice, told you he could perhaps go to university, perhaps escape this life of timber and cold. And this thought, this small, fragile hope, is what keeps the axe moving, what keeps your feet walking through the darkness each morning. The possibility that your son might know warmth, might sit in heated rooms and think thoughts that don't revolve around survival, might become something more than another pair of worn hands in the taiga. Anya, your daughter, is different, quiet, watchful. She collects small things, pine cones, interesting stones, feathers from the ravens that follow the work crews, waiting for scraps. She arranges them on the windowsill in patterns only she understands, creating small islands of beauty in a world that offers so little. Sometimes you catch her staring out the window, and you wonder what she sees, what she dreams, what she imagines beyond the endless white. The afternoon stretches or collapses. Time moves strangely here. Hours feel like days, days feel like hours. The light never quite arrives, never quite departs, just this constant gray dimness that makes your eyes ache, that makes it hard to judge distance, hard to judge anything. You fell 2 more trees before the foreman's whistle signals the end, and the walk home begins. Your body so tired it moves on instinct alone, one foot, then the other, the path appearing beneath you like magic, like faith.
You don't notice it at first, the change, because change comes slowly to places like this, grudgingly, as if the land itself resists transformation. It's the evening of January 20th, 1953, and you're splitting kindling behind the house, small pieces for the morning fire, when Dmitri calls out, his voice sharp with something you don't immediately recognize, excitement or fear, or perhaps both, intertwined like rope. The sky is doing something strange, even in the darkness, even in the cold that makes the stars seem closer, harder, like chips of ice. There's a sound, a distant roar that doesn't belong to wind, doesn't belong to anything you know. It grows, builds, a mechanical thunder that makes the air itself vibrate. And then you see them, shapes against the stars, metal birds with wings that catch the moonlight, aircraft, massive, flying lower than you've ever seen planes fly, so low you can feel the displacement of air, the pressure change that makes your ears pop. American bombers, B-29 superfortresses, though you don't know this. You only know they're not Soviet. The engines sound wrong, foreign, and there's a formation to their flight that speaks of purpose, of mission, of destination. They pass overhead like a migration of steel geese, heading west, and in their wake the night feels emptier, violated somehow, as if the sovereignty of the sky has been breached. Katya comes to the door, Anya clutching her skirt, both of them staring upward, faces pale in the reflected moonlight. You count 6 aircraft, 7, 8, their contrails forming white scars across the darkness, and you wonder what it means, this intrusion, whether it's the beginning of something, whether war has finally come to even this remote corner of the world, whether the rumors you've heard, whispered in the work camps, about tensions with the West, about bombs that can destroy entire cities, whether those rumors are about to become terrible reality. But the planes pass, the sound fades, and the night returns to its normal silence, the silence of snow and distance and cold. You finish splitting the kindling, though your hands shake slightly, from cold or from something else you're not certain. Inside, the family gathers close to the stove, closer than usual, as if proximity to each other might offer protection from whatever is happening in the world beyond these walls. 3 days later, the cold deepens. The thermometer drops to minus 48 degrees Celsius, and even the smoke from the chimney seems to freeze, falling as tiny particles of ice, like black snow. The village feels smaller, contracted, each house an island, each family huddled in their own survival. You see Grigori at the worksite, and he mentions that Soviet fighters have been scrambled, that there's activity at the airfield near Yakutsk, that something is happening. But information here is like heat. It dissipates quickly, gets lost in the vastness. On the 4th day, you learn fragments, pieces of a story that doesn't quite make sense. An American plane, damaged, separated from its formation, wandered into Soviet airspace, deep into Soviet airspace, lost. And a Soviet pilot, a fighter pilot whose name you'll never know, was ordered to shoot it down, to destroy it, to eliminate the threat. This is procedure. This is doctrine. This is what happens when borders are violated, when the Cold War turns hot in small moments that never make it into history books. But something else happened, something unexpected. The Soviet pilot, circling the American bomber, close enough to see the crew inside, close enough to see their faces, their fear, their youth, refused. He flew alongside them instead, guided them, shepherded this wounded bird through the darkness, showed them the way to neutral territory, to safety, risking court-martial, risking execution, risking everything for men he'd been trained to see as enemies. You hear this story in pieces, third hand, fourth hand, distorted by distance and translation and the natural human tendency to make legends from moments. But something in it catches in your chest, lodges there like a splinter. This pilot, this nameless Soviet pilot, chose mercy, chose humanity in a moment when every rule, every order, every structure of authority demanded violence. The work continues, because work always continues. Trees fall, timber accumulates, your quota is met, exceeded. The cold intensifies, January giving way to February, and February in Saka is somehow worse, darker, colder, as if winter itself is making one final brutal push before releasing its grip. You lose feeling in your left foot, the toes going numb, staying numb, and you know this is frostbite, know it will leave permanent damage, but you can't stop working, can't afford to stop, because stopping means no wages, and no wages means hunger, and hunger here means death. At night, lying beside Katya, listening to her breathing, to the children's breathing in the next room, you think about that pilot, about his choice. You imagine him in his cockpit, instruments glowing, the American bomber huge in his gun sight, one trigger pull away from completing his mission, from being a hero, from doing his duty. And instead, he chose to see men, not enemies, chose to preserve life, not take it, chose something that has no name in the official vocabulary of nations and armies and ideologies. The wind howls outside, snow drives against the windows like thrown sand, and you pull the blankets tighter, trying to hold on to warmth, trying to hold on to something. The story of the pilot feels important, feels like an answer to a question you didn't know you were asking, but you're too tired to understand why, too cold to think clearly. Tomorrow there will be more trees, more cold, more endless repetition. But tonight, for reasons you can't articulate, you feel something strange, something almost forgotten. Hope.
You wake to screaming, not human screaming,
but the scream of wood, the protest of timber stressed beyond endurance. It's the roof beam, the main support, cracking under the weight of accumulated snow and ice, a sound like a rifle shot in the pre-dawn darkness. And for a moment, you're suspended between sleep and terror, your body knowing before your mind that something fundamental has broken. February 14th, 1953. The temperature has dropped to minus 51 degrees Celsius, a cold so profound it seems to stop time itself, to freeze not just water, but possibility, hope, future. You scramble from bed, your damaged foot screaming its own protest, and in the lamplight you can see the beam, a dark crack running through its center like a fault line, like a wound. It hasn't failed completely, not yet, but it will, and when it does, the roof will collapse, and everything, everyone will be buried under snow and broken timber. Katya is already moving, gathering the children, wrapping them in blankets, her face set in that expression you've learned to recognize, controlled panic, fear held in check by the necessity of action. Dmitri is crying, silently, tears freezing on his cheeks, and Anya clutches her collection of small treasures, the pine cones and stones, as if these tiny, beautiful things might protect her from the collapsing world. You need timber, a replacement beam, but there's nothing suitable here, nothing strong enough, and the nearest village is 8 kilometers away. 8 kilometers in minus 51-degree cold, in darkness, with a damaged foot that sends lightning bolts of pain up your leg with each step. You know the mathematics of this, know that in this cold, exposed, you have perhaps 2 hours before hypothermia begins its final work, before your body starts shutting down, prioritizing core over extremities, life over limbs. But there's no choice. Choice is a luxury, an illusion. You dress in layers, everything you own, wool and felt and fur. You wrap cloth around your face, leaving only your eyes exposed, and even your eyes will freeze if you're not careful, the moisture crystallizing on your lashes. You tell Katya to take the children to the Orloff house, 2 doors down, to wait there, to stay warm, and she nods, understanding without words what this might mean, understanding that you might not return. The cold outside is a physical force, a wall. It hits you like a blow, drives the air from your lungs, and your first breath is knives, shards of ice tearing at your throat. You start walking, each step deliberate, measured, conserving energy, conserving heat. The path is barely visible. Snow has drifted, erased familiar landmarks, and navigation becomes instinct, memory, faith that your feet know the way even when your eyes cannot guide them. 1 kilometer. 2. Your damaged foot has gone completely numb, which is both blessing and curse. No pain, but no sensation. No way to know if you're walking correctly, if you're causing more damage. You fall twice, your muscles seizing in the cold, and each time you lie there, just for a moment, feeling the snow beneath you, so soft, so inviting, like a bed, and some part of your brain whispers that you could rest, just close your eyes, and the cold would do the rest, painless, gentle, like falling asleep. But you think of Dmitri, his mathematics, his chance at university, at escape. You think of Anya, her small, careful arrangements of beauty, her quiet dreams. You think of Katya, her gray eyes, her steady hands, the 1,000 small acts of love that constitute a marriage in a place like this. And you stand, you force a body upright, you continue. 4 kilometers, 5,
Hallucinations begin, the cold playing tricks with your oxygen-starved brain. You see the American bomber, massive, silver, flying low over the taiga, its engines trailing fire, and beside it the Soviet fighter, small, agile, not attacking, but guiding, protecting. You see the pilots, their faces, though you know this is impossible. No, you're seeing things that aren't there, but the vision persists. Two men, enemies by definition, brothers by choice, connected by a moment of impossible grace. The village appears, lights in the darkness, and you stumble toward them, falling against the first door you reach, hands too frozen to knock, just your body weight, your desperate need. They pull you inside, Mihail and his wife, old friends, and the warmth is agony, your skin burning as circulation returns. They strip your boots, your foot is black, 3 toes completely black, and you know what this means, know that amputation is likely, probable, but you've succeeded, you've reached help, you've survived. Michael organizes men, a sled, timber. They bundle you in blankets, give you tea so hot it scalds, and the rescue party sets out, returning to your house, to your family, to repair what can be repaired, to save what can be saved. You drift in and out of consciousness, fever setting in, infection already beginning its work, but you're dimly aware of movement, of voices, of the cold receding slightly, just slightly. Later, days later, you'll learn that your family survived, that the beam was replaced, that the house stands. You'll learn that you lost 4 toes, that you'll never walk properly again, that your days as a woodcutter are finished. You'll learn that you'll spend the rest of your life doing lighter work, sweeping, sorting, earning less, always less, struggling more, always more. But you'll also learn, somehow, through channels you don't understand, through connections invisible and mysterious, that the American crew made it home, that they survived, that they owe their lives to a Soviet pilot who chose mercy over orders, humanity over doctrine. And this knowledge, this small piece of information that should mean nothing to you, that has no practical value in your daily struggle for survival, somehow matters. It matters more than you can say.
You sit by the window now, more than you used to, because sitting is what you do, what your body allows. The foot, what remains of it, aches in the cold, a phantom pain where toes used to be, as if the missing parts are still out there somewhere, still walking through snow, still searching for warmth they'll never find. It's March now, 1953, and the light is returning, slowly, grudgingly, the way everything returns here, earned, not given. Dmitri brings you tea, hot and sweet, more sugar than you can afford, but Katya insists, says you need your strength, though you both know what she really means, that small kindnesses are how love manifests in places where words freeze before they can be spoken. He's grown taller, your son, or perhaps you've grown smaller, diminished by injury, by the awareness of your own fragility. He still studies his mathematics, numbers scratched on slate by candlelight, and you watch him, hungry for his success, for his escape, for proof that suffering can lead somewhere beyond itself. The story of the pilot has grown in the telling, as stories do. Each retelling adds details, embellishes, transforms fact into legend. Some say the Soviet pilot was shot down later, punished for his mercy. Others say he was decorated, rewarded for bringing valuable intelligence about American aircraft. The truth, whatever it is,
has been lost in the machinery of states and secrets, classified, buried, deemed too dangerous or too embarrassing to acknowledge. But you think about him, this pilot, this man whose name you'll never know. You imagine his hands on the controls, steady, certain, making calculations that had nothing to do with ballistics or trajectories, and everything to do with something deeper, older, the arithmetic of conscience, the geometry of souls. In your mind, he's young, perhaps 30, with a wife somewhere, children, people who wait for him, who measure time by his absence and his return, just as your family measures time by your presence, by the daily miracle of your survival. And the American crew, you imagine them too, 7 men or 8 or 10, the number varies in the stories, but the essential truth remains. They were young, they were lost, they were certain they would die. And then, impossibly, a Soviet fighter appeared, not to kill, but to guide, to shepherd them through the darkness, to show them the way home. These men, these Americans, they returned to families, to wives and mothers and children, to futures that should have ended in the frozen wastes of Siberia, but didn't because one man chose differently. The mathematics of it haunts you. 7 or 8 or 10 American lives preserved, continuing, multiplying. Those men had children or will have children, and those children will have children, and the descendants of that moment, of that single choice, will ripple forward through time, infinite, incalculable. Generations that exist because mercy prevailed over orders, because humanity proved stronger than ideology, even for just one moment, even in the darkness, even in the cold. You look at your own family, Katya mending clothes by the stove, her needle moving in and out, patient, eternal. Anya arranging her treasures, adding a new stone, smooth and gray, to her collection. Dmitri bent over his slate, solving equations that might someday carry him away from this place. And you understand, finally, what the pilot's choice means. It means that the world, this brutal, frozen, unforgiving world, is not fixed, not determined, not governed solely by the logic of states and borders and enmities. It means that individuals, single human beings, possess the power to alter trajectories, to choose differently, to insert mercy into systems designed for cruelty. It means that even here, in the remotest corner of the coldest republic, in a life defined by scarcity and hardship and pain, there is still agency, still choice, still the possibility of grace. Your own choice to walk through killing cold to save your family was different, smaller, less dramatic, but perhaps not so different after all. You risked everything, accepted loss, bore permanent damage so that others might continue, might have their chance at warmth, at future, at life. The pilot did the same, on a larger stage, with higher stakes, but the essential equation was identical. The willingness to sacrifice self for others, to choose preservation over destruction, to say no to the machinery that demands we treat each other as enemies. Spring will come eventually, the ice will break again, and the rivers will flow again, and for a few brief months the taiga will transform, green returning, flowers blooming in the perpetual daylight of summer. Life here moves in cycles, brutal winters giving way to brief, violent summers, and people endure, adapt, survive. You'll find new work, lighter work, something you can do with a damaged foot. The family will continue, smaller, poorer, but continuing nonetheless. And somewhere, across an ocean you cannot imagine, in a country you'll never see, American families gather around tables, celebrating birthdays, weddings, births, ordinary moments of ordinary joy made possible by extraordinary mercy. They don't know your name, don't know you exist, don't know that a woodcutter in Siberia thinks of them sometimes, feels connected to them through invisible threads of shared humanity. The sun sets, what little sun there was, and darkness returns, but it's a different darkness now, not absolute, not permanent, because you understand something you didn't before. The cold is real, the hardship is real, the suffering is undeniable, but so is the capacity for choice, for mercy, for the small brave acts that say, despite everything, despite the orders and the borders and the ideologies, we are human first. You close your eyes, feeling the ache in your foot, the warmth of tea in your hands, the presence of your family around you, and you think of the pilot one last time, hoping wherever he is, whatever happened to him, that he knows, that he understands, that his choice mattered, that it echoed, that it continues to echo in the lives he saved, in the families that continued, in the children born, in the future made possible. Outside, the wind rises, carrying snow across the empty whiteness, and somewhere high above, invisible in the darkness, contrails form and fade, aircraft passing through the night, going wherever aircraft go, carrying people, not enemies, just people, trying to get home. And that, you think, is everything. That is all we can ever ask. To choose mercy when given the chance, to guide the lost toward safety, to say no to the machinery of hatred, and yes to the difficult, dangerous, essential work of remaining human. The lamp flickers, oil running low, and soon you'll sleep. Tomorrow there will be more cold, more struggle, more of the endless repetition that constitutes life in this place. But tonight you carry something with you into sleep, a story, a choice, a proof that even in the darkest places, even in the coldest nights, the human heart still beats, still hopes, still chooses. Love over fear, mercy over vengeance, life over death. Always.